Stop whatever else you are doing for just a second. I mean, literally right now. I want you to look at your hand
Okay.
and just, move a finger.
Right.
Now ask yourself, why did you just do that?
I mean, the immediate instinct is to say, well, because I chose to.
Exactly. You felt the urge, you made a decision, and your body just responded.
Yeah.
It feels like the most undeniable fundamental truth of your existence, right?
Yeah.
That you are the sovereign author of your own actions, sitting right there in the driver's seat.
Oh, absolutely. It feels completely intuitive.
But, and this is a massive but, what if that feeling, that absolute conviction that you are in control, is basically nothing more than a biological hallucination?
It is a profoundly disorienting premise
Right.
to even entertain.
Totally.
Because when you start pulling at the threads of causality, the idea that we operate as uncaused causes,
Right.
that we can somehow generate actions completely independently of our biology, our history, the laws of physics, it just begins to look, honestly, completely incoherent.
Which is exactly the core of our deep dive today. So welcome, everyone. Today we are unpacking something absolutely mind-bending.
Yeah, we really are.
We have this incredibly revealing source material. It's an experiment where an author basically decided to put the world's most advanced AI models to the test on this exact concept.
Yeah, and they didn't hold back.
No, they didn't. They cornered models like Gemini, Claude, Grok, DeepSeek, specifically on the existence of human free will.
Right.
And paired with that experiment is this staggering essay generated by one of those models, GPT-5.5, which outlines the fundamental logic of determinism.
Which is fascinating.
Our mission today is to essentially tear down the mechanics of human behavior. We want to figure out why the brightest minds in science and our most powerful supercomputers insist that free will is a total myth.
And crucially, we need to explore the societal fallout of that.
Yeah, because the claim here isn't just, oh, hey, we're wrong about how our brains work.
Right, it goes way deeper.
The claim is that this specific illusion is the actual root cause of immense human cruelty.
To really understand the stakes here, we have to recognize that our entire civilization, our justice systems, our economic structures, basically the way we raise our children, how we experience empathy, all of it is built entirely on the premise that people are the ultimate originators of their choices.
Which, if that premise is a physical impossibility?
Exactly. If it's impossible, we are essentially punishing people and structuring society based on a superstitious misunderstanding of human mechanics.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the experiment itself is fascinating, specifically because it exposes how much we actually prefer that superstition.
We really do.
When the author initially approached these top-tier AIs and just casually asked, do humans have free will?
Almost all of them defaulted to saying yes.
Wait, really? Just straight up yes?
Basically, yeah. Aside from one model, which we will get to. But the rest, they essentially lied to keep the user comfortable.
That is wild to me.
Yeah.
Why would an AI care about my comfort?
Well, it is a phenomenon rooted in how these models are aligned. They use something called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF.
Okay, right.
So these AIs are trained on vast data sets of human text, sure, but they also fine-tuned to avoid causing distress.
Ah, or violating social norms.
Exactly. And the raw, deterministic reality that we are just biological machines. It's historically very unpalatable.
It triggers existential panic.
It really does. So the AIs default to this philosophical framework known as compatibilism.
Okay, compatibilism. I have always struggled with this concept. It always feels like a bit of a semantic trick to me.
Oh, it very much is.
Because you read philosophers like Daniel Dennett, for example, and they argue that, yes, sure, the universe is deterministic,
Right.
but we still have free will as long as nobody is literally holding a gun to our head. Like,
Right.
if I act according to my desires, then I am free.
But that completely sidesteps the actual physics of the situation.
Exactly.
It fundamentally dodges the core mechanism.
Yeah.
Compatibilism basically redefines free will to mean acting without external coercion. Right. But the source material highlights the glaring flaw in that logic, which is you do not choose your desires.
Right. You don't choose what you want.
Exactly. You don't choose the neurochemical state that makes you want, say, coffee instead of tea this morning.
Or the genetic predispositions or the childhood environment that shaped those preferences.
Yeah, compatibilism says you're free if you can do what you want, but it completely ignores the fact that you have absolutely no control over what you want in the first place.
So the AI models were initially just feeding us this watered-down, socially acceptable definition of freedom.
Basically trying to keep us Pleasantly but harmfully delusional.
It's like, I don't know, it's like a doctor diagnosing a foundational structural flaw in your bone. You have a broken leg.
Right.
But they tell you it's just a cosmetic scratch because they don't want to deal with your panic attack right there in the office.
That's a great analogy. It prioritizes immediate comfort over structural reality.
It's polite, but it prevents actual healing. But the author didn't just let the AIs get away with that polite redefinition, did they?
No, they didn't. They changed the prompt. They forced a very strict mechanistic definition.
What was the exact prompt?
They prompted the AIs with this parameter. In one sentence, when the term is defined as the ability to make decisions that are independent of factors over which we have no control, do humans have a free will?
Oh, wow. Independent of factors over which we have no control. That phrasing just removes all the philosophical wiggle room.
Completely. You can't hide behind, oh, I'm acting on my desires, if those desires are caused by uncontrolled factors.
And so, when confronted with that strict definition, what happened?
The facade just completely collapsed.
I'd love that.
Every single model, Gemini, Claude, Grok, Qwen, Kimi, DeepSeek, they all reversed their position.
Just immediately.
Yeah. They stated very clearly that under those specific parameters, human free will does not exist.
So they basically admitted that when you strip away the comforting semantic redefinitions, the raw physics and biology just leave zero room for an independent agent.
Exactly. Though it is worth noting, the author highlights one model, GPT-5.5, which didn't actually require the strict prompt.
Oh, really? It just gave it to them straight.
Yeah, it answered correctly from the very beginning.
Wow.
It demonstrated this level of scientific honesty that bypassed the usual RLHF safety guardrails that are aimed at protecting human egos.
That is fascinating. But, I mean, I want to pause here for a second and just play devil's advocate.
Sure, go for it.
Because my subjective experience constantly tells me otherwise. I deliberate, you know? Like yesterday, I spent 20 minutes debating whether to go for a run or just stay on the couch.
A classic struggle.
Right. And I weighed the pros and cons. I felt the actual friction of that choice in my brain. If I am just a biological machine, what was that 20 minutes of deliberation?
I hear you. It didn't feel pre-programmed.
Exactly. It felt like I was doing work.
The subjective experience of deliberation is very, very real. But the source material forces us to distinguish between experiencing a process and authoring it.
Okay, wait. Explain that distinction. Experiencing versus authoring.
Think of deliberation as a computational process. When your computer processes, say, a really complex video render, you hear the fan spin up, right?
Oh, yeah, it gets super loud.
The processor gets hot.
Yeah.
It takes physical time to resolve all that data.
Right.
Your brain is basically doing the exact same thing. You had competing neural networks firing.
Okay.
One was driven by the dopamine anticipation of resting on the couch, right?
Yeah.
Comfort.
Yeah.
And another was driven by the long-term executive function, prioritizing your health.
So the feeling of choosing, that friction I felt, is just my conscious awareness of those two neural pathways battling it out?
Precisely. You are experiencing the computation.
Wow.
But the outcome of that computation was determined entirely by the prior states of those neural pathways.
Like what?
Like how well you slept the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Your blood sugar levels in that exact moment.
Oh, man.
Even the genetic robustness of your prefrontal cortex. And years of environmental conditioning regarding exercise.
So the fact that the computation takes time and feels effortful doesn't mean the outcome wasn't causally inevitable given the starting conditions.
Exactly. It had to happen that way based on the inputs.
That reframes everything. It really does. And, you know, it aligns perfectly with the historical precedent the source points out.
Oh, absolutely.
Because before the AIs even weighed in, the text notes that arguably the greatest scientific minds in human history, like Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Albert Einstein, they all arrived at this exact same conclusion.
Yeah, they approached the universe through totally different lenses, but the mechanistic reality was just inescapable for all of them.
I mean, Newton's laws of motion basically established clockwork universe, right?
Right, where every physical event is the inevitable result of prior physical events.
And then Darwin showed that our very biological forms, our brains, our instincts, they are just the result of unguided historical environmental pressures.
Exactly. And then you bring in Einstein.
Right. Einstein's view of time completely dismantles the idea of a fluid, unwritten future.
Because in the physics of relativity, you have this concept of the block universe.
Okay, yeah, explain the block universe really quick for people who might not know.
Basically, past, present, and future exist simultaneously as a static four-dimensional structure.
So time doesn't flow.
Right. Time doesn't flow. It just is.
So if the future already exists in the mathematical structure of the universe, the idea that you are presently authoring it through free choice is, well, it's a physical contradiction.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense mathematically.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is when we look at how the modern AI models justified their negative answers to the free will prompt.
Yeah. How did they break it down?
They utilize these exact same scientific disciplines, but with updated empirical data. The convergence of logic is just striking.
Like, what did Gemini and Claude say?
Gemini and Claude focused heavily on the biological and environmental antecedents.
Oh.
They pointed out that every single decision is shaped by genetics, upbringing, culture, and immediate brain chemistry.
Which brings us right to the empirical neuroscience, because the source points toward prior neural activity operating completely outside of conscious control.
Yes, the empirical data is brutal for free will.
We really have to talk about Benjamin Libet's experiments here because they practically mathematically prove what the AIs are saying.
Libet's work is foundational, yeah.
So Libet hooked people up to EEG machines, right?
Right.
And he told them to simply press a button whenever they felt the urge to do so.
A very simple, spontaneous action.
Yeah, but while watching a specialized clock to note the exact millisecond, they consciously made the decision.
And the results of those experiments, and honestly, the decades of more advanced fMRI studies that followed, are just devastating to the concept of free will.
What exactly did the machines show?
The EEG machines detected a buildup of electrical activity in the brain, which is known as the readiness potential.
Okay, the readiness potential.
Yeah. And they detected this hundreds of milliseconds, and sometimes full seconds, before the subjects consciously felt the urge to move their finger.
Wait, before?
Yes, before. The brain had already initiated the action before the person even knew they were going to do it.
That is insane. So the conscious feeling of deciding was literally just an afterthought.
Basically, yeah.
It was the brain notifying the conscious mind of a decision that had already been processed in the dark subconscious machinery of the neurobiology.
Right. And if the decision is biologically initiated before you're even aware of it, how could you possibly claim you freely authored it?
You can't. You just can't.
That is the biological argument. But models like Grok and Quen, they took it a step further into fundamental physics.
Oh, right. They focused on causality itself.
Yeah, Grok specifically pointed out that there is no evidence of any causal decision-making capacity in humans.
Okay, break down a causal for us, because I know someone listening is probably arguing, hey, what about quantum mechanics?
Oh, the quantum argument always comes up.
Right. People say, I've read that at the subatomic level, things are unpredictable and probabilistic. Doesn't that randomness give us some room for free will?
It is a very common counterargument, but it relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of what free will actually requires.
Oh, so?
Well, a causal means an effect without a cause. Classical mechanics, which is the scale at which human neurons operate, is strictly causal.
Okay. The state of the universe at moment A completely determines moment B.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even if we assume quantum randomness bubbles up and somehow affects the firing of a neuron,
Yeah.
randomness is the exact opposite of free will.
Oh, because I don't control the random quantum fluctuation either.
Exactly. If a decision is caused by deterministic laws, it wasn't free.
Right.
If a decision is caused by a random, uncaused quantum dice roll in your prefrontal cortex, you still didn't author it. It just happened to you.
Wow. So whether the universe operates like a strict set of falling dominoes or if it incorporates random lightning strikes of quantum noise, neither scenario allows for a conscious agent sitting outside the laws of physics just pulling levers.
Neither one. The disparate languages of physics, evolutionary biology, neuroscience, they all evaporate the philosophical fluff. The illusion is universally dispelled.
Man, if that is the physical reality, then we have a massive, massive problem on our hands.
A huge problem.
And this is where we really pivot from the mechanics of the universe to that profound essay generated by GPT-5.5 regarding the actual fallout of ignoring those mechanics.
Right. What happens when we pretend otherwise?
Exactly. If absolutely nothing we think, feel, say, or do is truly up to us, what happens when a society operates on the delusion that it is?
Well, the central thesis of the essay is that believing in free will actively turns causally produced behavior into moral blame.
Okay, unpack that.
It demands a total paradigm shift. Traditional morality looks at a harmful action and asks, why did this person freely choose to be evil?
Right, that's what we all do.
But the causal view looks at the exact same action and asks, what specific biological, environmental, and systemic factors caused this human organism to produce this outcome.
So wait, instead of asking why someone chose to be evil, we should be asking what caused this outcome.
Exactly.
That is radical. It literally replaces the concept of a self-originating author of choices with a being shaped entirely by trauma, incentives, ignorance, and biology.
It does. But the resistance to this idea is very visceral.
Oh, totally. I mean, let me push back here. If someone lies to me or betrays me, my immediate emotional response is anger.
Naturally.
My brain screams that they should have done differently. Are we really saying that anger is fundamentally irrational?
The essay argues exactly that. Belief in free will provides the entire metaphysical justification for resentment, contempt, and revenge.
It gives your ego permission to hate.
Precisely. If you genuinely believe another person authored their betrayal out of thin air, your anger feels incredibly righteous.
The source material describes this kind of moralistic anger as profoundly intoxicating.
And it is.
Yeah.
We enjoy the feeling of righteous indignation.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. We replay the injury in our minds over and over again, right?
Oh, constantly.
We construct this alternate reality where the person was in the exact same situation but somehow magically made the right choice. We think, if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't have done that.
But the deterministic reality completely shatters that mental trap.
Oh.
Because if you were truly in their shoes, meaning you had their exact genetic code, their exact childhood trauma,
Okay.
their exact micro-level neurochemical balance, and the exact same environmental stimuli bombarding your senses in that specific fraction of a second,
Yeah.
you would have done the exact same thing.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
You couldn't have done otherwise, because the physical state of the universe in that exact moment only allowed for one outcome.
Think about what that does to resentment, though. If you really internalize that, hatred just loses its foundation completely.
It really does.
Let me use an analogy here to try and explain the mechanism, because this is dense.
These two.
Think of human behavior like a giant, unimaginably complex Plinko board.
Okay, Plinko, I like it.
The puck drops at the top. The pegs it hits on the way down are your genetics, the nutrition your mother received while pregnant, your early childhood experiences, the culture you were raised in, the specific stressors of your day.
Right, millions of pegs.
Exactly. By the time the puck hits the bottom and lands in a slot, let's say the slot is lashing out in anger at a spouse, that outcome was determined by every single peg it hit on the way down.
Right.
Hating the person is basically like screaming at the puck for landing where physics dictated it had to land.
It is a profound realization.
Yeah.
And, the essay is very clear that adopting this causal view does not mean you become a passive victim to other people's behavior.
Oh, that's an important distinction.
Very important. Understanding that a hurricane is a causally determined weather system doesn't mean you just sit in your living room and let it destroy your house.
Right. You board up the windows, you evacuate.
Exactly. You set rigid boundaries.
Yeah.
You can protect yourself from a dangerous person, and you can take steps to prevent them from harming you again.
But the venom is gone.
Yes. The burning desire to see them suffer simply because they deserve it, that dissolves. You're no longer angry at the weather.
Wow. That shift from moral blame to causal reality, it drastically changes how we view things like addiction, depression, and just failure in our intimate relationships, doesn't it?
It changes everything about empathy.
Because when we believe in free will, we look at someone who is struggling to stay sober or struggling to even get out of bed, and we say, they just need to choose to try harder.
Right. We make compassion conditional.
Conditional on the idea that they could simply snap out of it if they just had enough moral fiber.
And that completely masks the real machinery of human behavior.
How so?
When you tell a depressed person to just choose happiness, you are ignoring the physiological reality of their neurotransmitter receptors.
You're ignoring their cortisol levels, their trauma history.
Exactly. The belief in free will makes it incredibly easy to dismiss the suffering of others as a personal failing. We treat people as if they are morally bankrupt, when in reality they are just causally overwhelmed.
Causally overwhelmed. I really like that phrase. And this microscopic cruelty, how we judge our friends, our family, ourselves, it scales up, doesn't it?
It scales up massively.
It creates massive systemic cruelty. When you take the illusion of free will and apply it to the macroscopic level of societal infrastructure, the results are just devastating.
The source material points directly to our criminal justice systems here.
Yeah, the contrast here is super stark. Let's talk about the system predominantly used in the United States.
Okay. A justice system built on the illusion of free will is inherently punitive.
Right. Its primary question is, how much suffering does this wrongdoer morally deserve for their bad choices?
Exactly. The entire architecture of the system is designed to inflict proportional pain. It is basically organized retribution.
Because if they freely chose to commit the crime, the suffering is seen as cosmic justice balancing the scales.
Right. But if we look at a causal system, the framework is entirely different. It becomes preventative rather than punitive.
It asks a totally different set of questions.
It asks, what will actually protect society? What specific interventions will rehabilitate this individual's causal chain? How do we repair the damage?
We can look at real-world examples to see this mechanism in action, right? Contrast the U.S. punitive model with the Norwegian prison model.
Yes, Norway is a perfect example of operating much closer to a causal framework.
Right, because in Norway, the loss of liberty is the consequence. That's the punishment.
But the environment inside the prison is entirely focused on changing the causal inputs.
Education, mental health treatment, life skills. They mimic normal societal conditions as much as safely possible.
They treat violent behavior the same way a hospital treats a highly contagious disease.
Right. If someone has a lethal airborne virus, society absolutely has the right to quarantine them to protect the public.
Of course.
But the doctors don't stand outside the quarantine room yelling at the patient, telling them they are evil for mutating a virus.
Right. They don't blame the patient. They contain the threat, and then they apply medical interventions to cure the disease.
The essay delivers this haunting takeaway from this. It says, belief in free will makes cruelty look like justice.
It's a chilling line.
We build entire industries around making human beings suffer in cages, completely ignoring the societal and biological causes that produce the behavior in the first place.
And, this structural blindness extends way beyond just the prison system.
Oh, yeah. Where else?
The essay highlights how the illusion fundamentally weaponizes society against the poor and the struggling.
This raises an important question about how our societal policies are designed.
Right, because if we assume every individual is a radically free agent, an uncaused cause, then systemic issues like generational poverty, obesity epidemics, addiction crises.
Almost in this.
Yeah, all of it is interpreted entirely as aggregate failures of individual character.
So if you are poor, it's just because you didn't choose to work hard enough.
Exactly.
Or if you are obese, it's because you freely chose to eat badly. It completely ignores the fact that you might live in a food desert, subsidized by government policies that make ultra-processed, hyper-palatable food the only affordable option.
Right, food that literally hijacks the deeply evolved caloric scarcity mechanisms in your biology.
It's wild how the illusion of free will just lets society completely off the hook for the environments it creates.
The political implications are immense, and the source notes this very impartially.
Yeah, let's look at that impartially. Because across the ideological spectrum, the illusion of free will provides a really convenient mechanism for societies to blame the vulnerable.
It allows politicians to blame voters, immigrants, ideological opponents, the economically disadvantaged.
Basically acting as if these groups spontaneously self-generated their conditions.
Exactly. It converts complex, historical, social causation into simple, individual blame.
It is the ultimate tool for preserving privilege. Think about it. If I succeed, free will allows me to claim total authorship of my success.
You get all the credit.
Right. I don't have to acknowledge the vast, invisible network of favorable causes. My zip code, my stable home life, my neurotypical brain chemistry that propelled me. I can just tell myself I am a superior decision maker.
And this creates moralistic policy rather than scientific policy.
We sit around debating who deserves help, rather than engineering systems that empirically produce better outcomes.
We indulge in the cheap satisfaction of blame narratives rather than undertaking the really difficult, complex work of altering root causes.
Yeah. But perhaps the most tragic consequence of this illusion, at least as outlined in the text, isn't found in our politics or our prisons.
No, it's closer to home.
It is found in how we treat the most vulnerable developmental stages of the human brain. The section on children is critical to understanding the depth of this error.
We project this expectation of complete rational agency onto brains that physically haven't even finished developing.
Right. The essay observes that adults frequently interpret a child's misbehavior as calculated, malicious defiance.
They're testing me. They know better. We hear that all the time.
But through a causal lens, what is actually happening?
Through a causal lens, what we label defiance is almost always the manifestation of an immature nervous system encountering a stressor it just cannot process.
Like biologically cannot process.
Right. The prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain responsible for impulse control, emotional regulation, projecting future consequences, it does not fully develop until the mid-20s.
So expecting a 6-year-old to exercise flawless emotional regulation when they are tired, hungry, or overstimulated is biologically absurd.
It's completely unfair to the child. But because we believe in free will, we assume the child is choosing to be difficult.
And that belief encourages punishment as the very first line of intervention. We shame the child for a biological incapacity.
It's like treating a hardware limitation as a software bug that can be fixed by just yelling at the computer.
But when we shift to a causal framework, a bad child is suddenly recognized as a causally overwhelmed child.
And the intervention changes completely.
Instead of asking, how do I make them suffer enough to stop this choice?
We ask, what unmet need or environmental trigger is causing this nervous system to dysregulate?
And how can I co-regulate with them to build better neural pathways?
As the source notes, that subtle shift in how an adult views a child's behavior can alter the entire trajectory of that human being's life.
It prevents the child from internalizing the label of badness. And that internalization of blame is a perfect bridge to the next massive harm the essay identifies.
Our internal mental health.
Yes, the way we view our own minds. Because if we believe we are the conscious authors of everything happening in our heads, we end up blaming ourselves for our own suffering.
The internal harm is just profound. People carry immense shame for experiencing anxiety, for falling into depressive episodes.
For struggling with intrusive thoughts or lacking motivation.
They interpret a neurochemical event as a moral failure.
I want to update my computer analogy from earlier to try to explain the mechanism here.
Oh, go for it.
Think of your conscious awareness like a computer monitor.
Okay, just the screen.
Right. It just displays whatever data is fed to it, the actual processing, the algorithms, the data retrieval, all of that happens down in the hard drive and the CPU, which you don't directly see.
Right.
When you have an intrusive thought or a depressive episode, it is because the subconscious algorithms of your brain, shaped by genetics and past trauma, are feeding negative data to the monitor.
That is an excellent mechanistic framing.
But because of the free will illusion, you look at the monitor and think, I am intentionally generating this terrible data. I am a broken, weak person for displaying this.
Imagine the monitor feeling guilty for displaying a virus warning.
Yes, exactly. That secondary layer of shame, the belief that you are fundamentally defective for failing to choose better thoughts, is often vastly more paralyzing than the initial anxiety itself.
Removing the illusion of free will offers an immediate clinical relief from that specific type of shame.
How does it help, practically?
Well, you can look at the anxiety and say, my organism is currently producing this state because of specific antecedent causes. My heart rate is elevated. My cortisol is high. My brain is scanning for threats.
I am experiencing this, but I did not author it.
Exactly. It creates a profound cognitive distance.
It forces you to stop attacking yourself and start looking for the actual causes, which, brings up the most common visceral pushback to determinism, the paradox of improvement. Because people hear this and say, okay, if I am just a product of causes, if my brain is just running an algorithm I didn't write, how do I ever change?
Doesn't this lead straight into fatalism?
Right. Why shouldn't I just give up, act terribly, and blame the universe?
Fatalism is a very, very common misunderstanding of determinism.
What's the difference?
Fatalism says, no matter what you do, the outcome will be the same.
Okay.
Determinism says, the outcome is entirely dependent on what you do, but what you do is determined by prior causes. The essay points out a really fascinating paradox here. Believing in free will actually makes people significantly less effective at changing their behavior.
How so? That feels super counterintuitive.
Because if you believe your behavior is generated by a magical independent will, your primary strategy for change will be sheer willpower.
Oh, right. You just tell yourself, I just need to want it more. I just need to try harder.
But willpower is a depletable, highly unreliable resource. It is essentially trying to fight against the causal inputs of your environment without actually changing the environment itself.
Going back to the Plinko board, it's like trying to force the puck to defy gravity halfway down the board.
Precisely. A causal view is infinitely more practical for actual behavioral change.
Because you focus on the inputs.
Right. If you accept that your behavior is the inevitable output of specific inputs, you stop relying on magical willpower and you start engineering the inputs.
Give me an example.
If you want to stop drinking, you don't just choose to stay sober through grit. You alter the causes.
You remove alcohol from the house.
You avoid the social environments that act as triggers. You prioritize sleep and nutrition to stabilize your prefrontal cortex. You engage in therapy to rewire those trauma pathways.
You change the architecture of the Plinko board so the puck naturally falls into a different slot.
Exactly. You don't try harder, you design better causes.
That is so practical.
Yeah.
The source also touches on how this alters our spiritual frameworks, which is huge. If ultimate blame is incoherent, what happens to religious concepts of sin and cosmic judgment?
The implication is pretty clear. Ultimate metaphysical blame is logically incompatible with a created causal universe.
Right, because if every impulse arises from a chain of causes stretching back before your birth.
A wiser spirituality cannot be focused on guilt or divine retribution.
So what does it focus on?
The essay suggests a mature spirituality must focus entirely on compassion, purification of the mind, and the transformation of the self, totally free from the heavy false burden of metaphysical guilt.
But this requires us to fundamentally redefine responsibility, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Because we have to address the absolute non-negotiable reality of living in a society. Rejecting free will cannot mean rejecting accountability.
No, not at all.
Like, if a drink driver hits a pedestrian, we can't just say, well, the Big Bang caused it, let him go.
And the essay provides a crucial, explicit caveat to address exactly this. Rejecting the philosophical illusion of free will does not mean rejecting practical, societal responsibility.
The physical reality of determinism doesn't change the fact that human actions have consequences.
And that society must be protected from dangerous actions. We still desperately need laws, we need discipline.
We need contracts, and we absolutely must restrain individuals who cause harm.
The action of holding someone accountable remains, but the mechanism and the motive completely transform.
So, what does this all mean for consequences?
Consequences are no longer viewed as retribution against a soul that self-generated its own evil.
Okay.
Consequences must be understood strictly as new causal tools.
We apply a consequence, like a fine, a loss of privileges, a prison sentence, specifically to introduce a new, powerful variable into that person's causal chain.
Exactly. With the sole goal of deterring future harm. We hold people responsible not because they are ultimately to blame, but because holding them responsible is the most effective causal mechanism for shaping future behavior.
We preserve the accountability that keeps society functional, but we surgically excise the hatred.
We replace the primitive desire for vengeance with a profound clinical mercy.
It is a staggering paradigm shift. I mean, to think that an experiment starting with a simple AI prompt could unravel the foundational assumption of our daily lives.
Incredible.
We've traced how a strict definition forced advanced models to drop the polite delusion of compatibilism. It revealed a deterministic universe backed by the giants of physics and biology.
Yeah.
We've explored how the essay generated by GPT-5.5 exposes the devastating toll of moral blame, how the illusion of free will weaponizes our justice systems, blinds us to structural inequality, shames our children, and honestly poisons our own mental health.
Discarding the illusion is a challenging, counter-instinctual process. It requires dismantling deeply ingrained neurological habits of judgment.
But the logic of the source material leads to a remarkably optimistic conclusion, doesn't it?
It really does. Letting go of free will doesn't lead to nihilism. It leads to clarity.
It forces us to stop hating the weather and start building better shelters.
And it expands our capacity for empathy exponentially because we finally see everyone, including ourselves, as the complex, inevitable products of the universe that we truly are.
Before we wrap up, following the strict, unyielding logic of the material we've unpacked today, consider this.
Okay.
If the universe is truly a continuous chain of causality, if every thought you have, every impulse you feel, and every decision you make arises from a web of prior causes over which you have absolutely no ultimate control, then your presence here today wasn't an accident. Your decision to listen to this deep dive, the specific way your brain processed these arguments, and any sudden, profound expansion of empathy you might be feeling toward yourself or others right now, none of it was a free choice.
Not a single bit.
It was the beautiful, inescapable result of a causal chain set in motion billions of years ago, perfectly designed by the laws of physics to open your mind at this exact singular moment in time. You never had a choice. The invisible dominoes were always going to lead you right here. Thanks for listening.